Good morning and welcome to the continuing series on getting started with FDOT Connect for OpenRoads. Today's fascinating session is going to be on the traffic plan tools that have been in development and have been released to date with your installation of ORD. It's a fast-moving topic, so things that I will show you today have either been added since the last release or have been refined or work better. So there's a lot of new stuff here, even if you are familiar with or have used any of the traffic plan tools. My name is Randy Roberts. I work in central office, and those that have dealt with me know me from the Civil 3D side. I do support the traffic plans on that platform along with the quantities, and the traffic plan tools in ORD are very similar to what is already in Civil 3D. So if you have worked on the Autodesk platform, these will seem awful familiar to you, which is a good thing. All right, so that is, let me switch over to ORD. So what we're going to talk about today is the FDOT signs application, the pavement marking application, and what is coming up shortly. Hopefully, by the time we release, it should be in there, which is the place cell group, which will allow you to place your painted pavement messages, your RPMs, and another tool that's going with it is able to draw conduit for your lighting plans and signal plans. Okay, so I have ORD open, and on the FDOT ribbon, there's a nice pretty icon, FDOT signs. And when I open it, it comes up ready to go to work. But if it's the first time that you're opening it, it will have a box with a lot of words on it that says you need to reset the folder location. So, and that box is not expanded all the way. So you will need to manually expand that box, just drag the corner off and see the controls on the bottom of it. One of them says reset project folder. So go, you do that first, and then you're ready to go. So what I'm going to do is go over the dialog box here, all the options, explain them to you, and then we're going to create some signage and place them. And before I really get started, just know my team is on the line also answering questions that you ask, and the ones that don't get answered, I'll be answering after the webinar, included in a document that will be posted along with the recording of the webinar, so you can go back and re-review and check your answers out. Or you could also email me direct, randy.roberts@f.dot. You know my email address. All right, so in the assembly, ORD Sign Assemblies dialog box, we have 4 tabs. We have Assembly Creation, Labels, Tool Settings, and User Settings. When you first open, you have 2 options here. You can either create a new assembly or open an assembly from an XML file. And what that does is you can create and save your assemblies to an XML file for later use. And I'll show you the benefits of that, and also show you what I already have created and delivered for you, preset, pre-created sign assemblies. Here is, next to the assembly, there's a pull down here. And right now, when I click on this down button, there is nothing to be shown. However, if you open up a signing file that already has assemblies placed, this list will populate and will show you all the assemblies that are placed in the file, where they're located on a alignment and what station. And as we place some assemblies, you'll see how this list populates. Now, this is real handy for locating a sign that you've already placed and you want to edit it or change it. You can easily navigate to it because when you select it, it will highlight and zoom to it. Okay. All right. So going over the Labels tab real quick, we have a text style, which is FDOT signs, that is specially created for the sign tool. I had to create that so the size comes in correct on the panels and posts labels. We have a add shapes toggle, and the shapes are the rectangle and the oval shapes that go around the labels that you're familiar with. By default, we toggle them on. Under panel, we have display name and display size, which is the name of the panel and which size we're using. Notice display state is not toggled. That is toggled on if you are placing a to be relocated or to remain sign or just a panel only for that designation. You will need to label that state. You have the level control for the panel label itself. It's going on text label. And under post is very similar to panel. And the level for it is pay item underscore DP. So that's pretty much all for labels. And of course, you have your commands to use it. Switching to the tool settings, we have a connector. Now, a connector is like a leader line that connects your post to your panel or panels. And as you move the either or, the post or the panels, the connector moves with it. And that currently is on text label level. And you do have control ability to draw the connector upon placement, or you can also need to redraw a connector. You simply come to the tool settings and select connect assembly, and then follow the instructions down here on the screen. Typically select the post, select the panel, and then it draws it. There are some utilities here. Issue cleanup. When you open this and you have a list of items here, that means you have some residual items in your file that need to be cleaned up. As you go through editing your file, there's no telling what could happen, a crash, just everyday usage. It will have stuff that is trapped in the file. If it's listed here, you can simply just clear, highlight it, and it'll remove those items. Whether, and the name of those are the same assembly, same post, same sign label, orphan label, or missing alignment. Just cleans that up in the background. Convert free will allow you to convert an already placed assembly that has been placed to an alignment. It will take away that association from the alignment and just have it in there free. Pretty simple concept there. Match scale. Match scale will take let's say you have a drawing, this particular file I'm working with, I think it's 40 scale. So you have a 50 scale drawing and your panel assemblies look, they're the wrong size. you can select match scale and it will resize the panels for you to look optimum for you. All right. Update stations will allow you to, once we move an assembly along an alignment, that station will update, and it is dynamic, which I'll show you. But there are instances where you will manually have to update the stations, and it will force that station to update on it. Typically, this is not used that much because it's pretty good on the dynamic standpoint. So just keep it in mind. Here is that tool. The last tab is the user settings. We have toggled on highlight assembly when selected, show label removal warning, which is when we go to relabel either a panel or a post, it lets us know, hey, you're fixing to delete the current label so you can place a new label. That's good. You want that little warning system because you don't want to accidentally relabel it and you've just deleted your custom label that you may have modified or added some text to. Here's where we add connector on placement. Toggle that on or off. Default is obviously on. Show alignment warning. Zoom assembly. Now, right now this is toggled off, and what this does is after an assembly is placed, a zoom view 4 down here will toggle on and zoom to that assembly placement. Right now, I think it's better to just have that off, but here are your controls for that, and you can also control which view it's associated to. Station precision is set to 0 as per FDOT. There are options in case you did want precision. You can add those here. Control. Tab alignment. You have top or right. I'll have to look and see what that means. I think that's a new thing that was added in since I've got the latest delivery of it. And right now I'm averaging 2 deliveries a week of the sign tool. So it is, like I said, fast moving as far as the maturation process of this tool. Okay, so one of the most important parts of the tool is the pathing for your locations. There are the browse folder. Browse folder is where you will save and recall your saved sign assemblies. The custom guide file is where you will point your file, point to the file that contains where your guide signs have been created. And this tool does work with guide sign. It will function very similar to what you would expect coming out of SS4. And I will show you the placement of them is just like how I'm going to show you how to build and place regular assemblies. Now, we'll not be covering guide sign today in this webinar, but in a future webinar, because I think that's a lengthy, it needs more attention to detail than what I can give it today in this webinar. Panel and post cell folder and library, that's just pointing to what cell library the post and the panels are. So that's just set to what it's set to for it to function. All right, so if I expand admin only, there are a couple of important things here to make note of. There is a load default settings button. And what that is, there is an XML file, and it's actually right here. You can get to it right here. If I open it up, it contains some settings that, first off, I set these in Central Office here, and it's delivered with the sign tool. But for consultants, you also have the ability to come in and make some changes to this, so you can put on the individual workstations if you wanted, for example, your add shapes. You can make it true or false. You can control the spacing on the labels, the zoom, and you can also see the pathing is also in here. So you can change that and then click Load Default Settings. Now, when you get this, you not only did you have to reset the project folders, that first dialog box that comes up when you open Sign Tool, you may have to go to the user settings and go ahead and click Load Default Settings, and that will load that file that showed you in, and it will set all these settings. You notice when I said it was set to default, as I went over these options, it was set to default because I loaded the default settings to make it that way, instead of having to do it manually. That's a lot quicker than the way it used to be, where you had to go through manually the first time you used it and set all the settings manually, because it's can't hard code those settings into the application, because I've asked to do that. And you know, the developer knows my name is Randy, but he always answers the phone, "What now?" So I don't know if that's a new name for me or what, but we're in constant contact, and any issues or problems that you have turn into solutions from him. So, you know, I kind of like problems and errors in this, because it gets fixed or suggestions get added to the application, which makes your workday easier, right? That's what we want. All right, so you have some shortcuts to the application folder, which opens up to where the sign tool is located in your install. And we have the FDOT.signs XML file, which contains all the pay item information that go with signage. It is delivered, and as we place these panels and posts, specifically the post, because that's where the pay item information goes on only, it will pull from this XML file and put that data in your file. So if you use the sign tool for your all your signage, you will have all the pay item information on it, ready to pull off and report when that becomes available. This is also where your settings default files located, and other useful XML files. There is a folder also in the sign tool, and it contains pre-created assemblies. Now, I did have to recreate these. The ones that you have currently will not work because I had to update a couple of things. So with the release coming out, the new maintenance release, you will get these. And some training feedback we got a couple of weeks ago, I will be adding additional signage here, different categories. So I'm going to be organizing that a little differently. But to start you with, I've created some common assemblies, and I will show you how these work in the tool. And one neat thing is you can use these same XML files in Civil 3D or ORD. You can create the signage in ORD, use it in Civil 3D and vice versa. So it's pretty neat that it's cross-platform compatible. Okay, there is a error log file. So when you do have, I should say when, if you have an issue with the sign tool, you can open that error log file, because I will need that to send to the developer so he can troubleshoot it pretty quick, get a solution, and get you a new sign tool file. Okay. And of course, the sign assembly version number. I think the first of the year, I think I was at 12. So I've had 13, or I've had 11 deliveries since then. Okay, so that sums up all the options in the sign tool. So now you're like, how do I use it, right? So let's start creating some assemblies. Okay, like I said before, you have a create an assembly and open an assembly from the XML file, from the files I just showed. So we're going to create a brand new one. And when I click on it, you see a new option comes up, assembly. It collapses. And as we go through and enter additional criteria, we'll have additional collapsible menus that come up that need some criteria entered into it. And it's best to go top to bottom, left to right when using the sign tool. Just remember that, top to bottom, left to right. So we're going to enter in all the information, starting here with the name. Right now, the default sign -001. Now, this 3-digit code here is always going to be here. In fact, it will count up if you have additional, let's say, stop signs, for example. You have 5 stop signs. It's the same sign assembly, but it will add a additional number to the counter here, and that allows the sign tool to keep track of all the signage in the file. Has a different name for it, so it doesn't get confused and crash you out. So to change the name, just highlight it. Let's just call it M1 space 4, I think here. If I hit tab, see how the 001 pops up? Well, this is the first sign in this file, so you have no control over that. So it automatically, even if you delete it, it'll still show back up. For justification, we have a left, center, and right, and we're going to do a center justification. For structure, we're going to do panel and post. Here's where you would select panel only if you had that option to create one. So we'll select create assembly settings. Notice how the assembly pull down collapsed, and now we have a panel that just popped up out of nowhere, right? Okay, so we have a location with a eyeglass here. Just click on the eyeglass, it opens up a grid view, and it shows a front, which is the top part here, and a back, which is the bottom. And that represents the front side of your sign and the back side. So if you had a double-sided sign, it would, the back side obviously go here. So notice this yellow box here. Yellow means that is the grid box that this panel's going. And I'll show you what happens when we, because I'm purposely going to do an error here and show you how to fix it all in one swoop here. But anyway, here's the grid view. We're going to use this F00 to start with. Just click anywhere off of it to close it. You can see that the number's here. Now you can do a panel search if you know the name, or you can use these browse buttons here. So for application, we have conventional, expressway, freeway, minimum, and oversized. So we're going to leave that as at the default conventional, but we are going to change this panel class, which you can see it has a list here. It's easier to, like for the route markers, they start with M. So these little letters here in parentheses represent what type of signage it is also. So you have two ways to know. For panel name, let's do a US route sign with 3 digits. Now, when I selected that, you notice a preview came up. If you do not get a preview of that panel, that means your pathing is wrong. That means go ahead and stop what you're doing here. Click this X up here, which cancels the assembly creation. Go to user settings and try to figure out what is wrong with the pathing. Just typically just reset those defaults and that should fix it. Okay. So we have a preview here. We're good to go. Click on the size button here. It says select available sizes from list. For this one, there's only one size, 30 by 24. And like I said before, all this information is coming from that FDOT.signs XML file that comes with the installation. Has the pay item information along with all the sizes, all the criteria that go with it. And we maintain that in-house. So I've been here 8 years and only one time has signage went through a change in basis of estimates. So hopefully that won't happen again. But if it does, I will need to change that XML file for you. And if you're thinking, hey, those XML sign assemblies that are already made will need to be revised, you're right. So all that will get changed. For state, we have existing to remain, proposed, remove, relocate. So I'm going to select proposed. And for field, we'll enter in 319. Now with this panel done, you have to select add first panel. And here, if this was the only panel we were doing, you would hit confirm assembly, but we're going to add one more panel. So let's go ahead and do that. Conventional route markers is good. Let's do M31, cardinal direction north, and size. It's only one available, 24 by 12. And for reference, you can enter in your custom size, which you will have to do with guide sign, just to enter it in, just like you see here. You don't have to put the inch mark in there. You can just enter it 24x12. That'll automatically convert it to inches for you. Just a little tip there. So under state, we still want this proposed to match the other. And then select add next panel. And then we see a problem. This preview shows the north to the side of the 319, but we want that north to be on top of that 319 assembly. So we go back to the grid view. Now you see two green, that means they are in use, and of course that yellow means that's what's next, but we want to move these around. Before the old way, you'd have to delete these and just restart the creation process, but now there's some right-click functions that have been added to the tool. So we want to move that 319 down, which is this first one. So right-click on it. You have two functions here, relocate or remove. So I'm going to relocate that, and I'm going to click here where I want it. Then I'm going to right-click on that north, relocate, and click above the 319. Give it a second, and it comes up where it's supposed to go. Now, I know that you see that this is not centered here. This is on the list to get fixed. I should expect that delivery coming up this week to address that, but by the time the March release comes out, you shouldn't experience this at all. All right, so from here we want to confirm assembly because this is all the panels we're going to build for this. Whoops, before I go do that, I got to point this out to you. The panel area of this north is 2 square feet. There's also a running total for both panels combined. In this instance, it's 7 square feet. And square footage determines what pay item number it pulls from that XML file. All right, so I'm going to select confirm assembly, and now we're into our post option. Notice we can still expand or collapse the previous panels we went through, the pull downs. For post, you can do a post search, or you can go through this list here, which is, I think, easier. Installations, ground mount, panel only, overhead, mounting. You have all your different mounting types listed. For this, we want single or multi-post. For state, we're going to do proposed. You have existing to remain also. For sign type, we're going to do furnish and install ground mount. For options, you can either do one-sided, two-sided, three-sided, four-sided, 2-post, 3-post, 4-post. So we're going to do one-sided. And this preview behavior is just like with the panel. If you don't see it, something's wrong with your pathing. So you can see the description here is from that XML file, and it's pulling up from 0 to 12 square feet. It's got a pay item number picked out for you. And I think, what was it, 9 square feet for the total. So we're under 12. All right, so got those selected. Go ahead and confirm post. And now the final pull down here to placement options come up. We have a rotation type of relative. We have a rotation angle of 0. Now these are the defaults and what you should use to begin with. For rotation type, the alternative is absolute, where you select that angle. We have place on alignment, which should be used by default, which, well, obviously you're fixing to see. Pretty much. Place panel. Down here, it's asking for the alignment. And as I move the assembly to either the bottom side of this alignment or the top, see how it rotates to rotate along the traffic flow. So I'm just going to left click out there. It places it. Now I'm ready to place the post. This is new. This now matches the Civil 3D version where it remembers the alignment where you place the panel, and now the post comes up ready to place. You can place it wherever you want. Now, if you do want precision, you'll need to use IQ Draw. You can place it at a station and offset, but a lot of the feedback we got was a majority of the time, it's just they're placing it there and they will move it manually. All right, so with the place panel and the place post completed, you do have to select finish assembly before you label it. You can't go straight to the label tab once you place it. Physically select finish assembly. And then go to the label tab. With the defaults already set, we went over, select place panel label, and I'm just going to select each panel, and then I'm going to switch over to place post. A couple of things here that I'm working on now. I understand that 3 digits does not need to be in that label, so I will be modifying the cell names and block names, both platforms, to do away with that. But these are your shapes I was discussing earlier, and your station. Now, let's see if this has been fixed. Station 702 plus 74. So we're going to test something live, right? So I'm going to select the entire assembly, and I'm going to move it. All right, so the station updated, and it looks to be correct. So you see how that's dynamic, that it updates the station and the shapes stay with it and move with it. And that was an issue before where your shapes disappear when you move it. So that's been fixed and added in here. And I could be doing a webinar on the same topic, I think 9 months from now, and it would be a lot different and better, right? With some more features that have added into it. Ideally, we'd want the functionality that's in the Civil 3D version in the ORD version, because it's pretty powerful. And I think we're about 90% there with it. It's catching up quick. Okay, so we got that placed, and you're finished right now with the assembly creation and placing process. Now you can move on to a different one. Or what we're going to do, we're going to open a saved file and place it, show you how quick that is. But before we get there, you have a couple of extra things that show up, right? Because before we had create new assembly and open assembly from XML file. Now we have a save assembly to XML file. This does exactly what you think it would do. Take the assembly you just created and save it to that location of your choice. Just give it a good name so you can easily refer to it later, or another designer can refer to it. And the location I showed you of these preset signs, you can change them to point anywhere in your company's infrastructure or whatnot to have a sign library basically already created. Because I know for a fact you will be adding to these, right, for your common assemblies once you see how fast it is. You also have an option to create assembly from copy. So let's say you wanted 319 South, you would create a copy, go to that grid view, right click, remove North, and add a South here, and continue on just like the original process. That's when you would use the create copy. And edit current assembly. So let's say this list, as you see, it has one sign here. So if we had more than one, you would select it, go to it, and select edit, and it will allow you to edit an already placed assembly. So you could, you would have to replace it in the screen and relabel it, but in case you wanted to change any of the route numbers or anything in the fields that are editable, that's what you would do with that. All right, so let's open up an already created sign. And from our list, let's do a yield sign. Now, I did create 3 individual sized yield signs here to match what's in your BOE. and it comes up with a preview of it. And once I select load, notice all the information is already filled in for me. So this is where the speed comes in. So you have the panel area, total area. A little tip here, we did have to add the ability to calculate the square footage of a yield sign because it's not obviously square or rectangle. So we did add that in. It took a long time for somebody to mention that. So it's been addressed. So with everything filled in, all you have to do is confirm assembly. Post comes up same way, it's already filled in. Confirm post. So we click to open. We confirmed twice, that's 2 clicks. And now we're ready to place the yield sign. And it's the same process as other finish assembly and label. Okay. So there are kind of 3 ways you can do an assembly now with this version of the sign tool. You can manually create and place. You can open an XML file that's already created for you. Or if it's the same assembly, you can copy it further down the alignment. As you copy along a curve, if you selected relative rotation, your post will rotate along the curve with you. So that's neat, right? All right, let's see. Let's see if we can do a quick multi-panel for you. All right, so I'm going to create a new assembly. I'm going to go through this one pretty fast since you already know the how this works. So I'm going to confirm assembly. I'm going to do actually the route markers, but this time I'm going to let me start over again. All right, now I'm going to select the right grid. Right, I showed you that error to begin with. That doesn't mean that you should do that every time. So let's do north proposed, add first panel. East, select the size, proposed, add next panel. Go up to the grid. Actually, this one should be here. Relocate that to there. Select the next one. Now we're ready. We're going to put a 3-digit route sign again with the size, proposed, field 319. Add next panel. It's going to make sure the grid is yellow where I want it, which is right here. And select the 2-digit US route. It's a different size, 24 by 24, proposed 98. So add next panel. Okay. So we're going to confirm assembly, go to post, make my selections like I did before. Now, one new thing here to add, this was added in. You can now manually select whether it's a single post, double post, and so forth. Before, it was finicky on how it selected the post. You didn't have any control over that. So now you can control it. Let's say make this a 2 post, confirm post, and then place panel. Again, I know it's not centered. That should be fixed in the next delivery. And finish assembly. All right, so there's a multi-panel. It's pretty quick to create and place, and then you could save it like I showed you before. There are a couple of little bugs here where for example, the 319 panel is bleeding over into the 98 panel. Again, that's the same fix as this here, so that will be delivered without that little problem. But that's pretty much the sign tool, right? And how it works now. And just for example here, you can see the list I was talking about earlier is populated now with the yield sign, has a alignment name and a station. So if you had multiple alignments, you can navigate to the sign of your choice pretty easy based on the alignment and station value listed here. So if I select the yield sign, let's see, yeah, pops up and it's highlighted in the drawing. All right, so let me close the sign tool and let's move on to the pavement marking tool. This shouldn't take long at all to show. When you first open it up, it has 3 modes: striping, separation, chevron, diverge, and merge. It has a item list here. When you select item, if this is the first time you used it, it's going to ask for a pay item database file. And that is the pay item db.xml file that is located in the install directory of the pavement marking tool. And we're working on a more permanent solution or location for that. So if you're starting to use this and you can't find it, let me know and I will point you to that direct location. But once it is loaded, it's reading, like I said, this pay item database. It has all your traffic components here, all your patterns with the pay item number already selected. So you would, first time using it, you would go through this list and select it and hit OK. But if you've been using it for a while, there's a history list up here that will, I think it goes up to 10 and your 10 last choices. So after you've been using it, you can come up here and select a pattern without having to browse through the database, which saves time. So let's do a this 1030 skip for a single pattern. You have a offset, so we're just going to use 12 feet. And make sure your use element points are toggled on, right? There's no default settings here to load. You just have to manually do this. It's not much to this application to do this anyway. So make sure use element points are toggled, and that will allow it to offset from any element that you choose. So from here, just select draw stripes. You can offset any line, construction line work, smart lines, anything that's in your file. And one thing that we've gone back to is this is a line type now, the 1030 skip. It's not individual pieces. So now you can edit and modify the pattern with your regular drafting commands, extend, trim, and whatnot. So to make it easier, and it matches Civil 3D. We have a line type also. Makes it easier to manage. Now, what's coming up in the sign tool is not in this delivery that I have here, but when you get it in the next MR, there will be a manual draw tool. So you can also draw these patterns freehand, either just tracing your construction line work or drawing in your file. Stop bars, make it a little easier, right? Because you can draw stop bars with this. It's a few more clicks. It's a lot easier just to trace over an existing line or snap to some points. Again, that will be hooked up to that pay item database. So you just make your selection and draw it. All right, so you have a couple of other options here. Draw perpendicular, enable outside, use buffer. So if you want to draw two lines, select enable outside. Notice now we have an outside pattern. So let's see if this will do this. We have two of the same. So let me show you a tip here. So I want two of the same, right? A quick way to do that is to come down and you can use inside for outside stripe. Toggle that on. That'll automatically copy the inside to the outside, so you don't have to browse to get the same pattern. And we want justification. You have inside, center, and outside. And what that is, so I'm going to draw two lines. So if I've got inside selected, this pattern here is the inside, so it's going to offset 1, and then it's going to do the distance between stripes. So let's see if that will work. Yeah, so you can do multiple lines. I knew that would work. But what we're adding additional is drawing more than two lines. So that was, people said, well, if you can draw two, let's draw more. So what we're going to do, we decided, me and the developer, is we're going to start with 6, right, as a maximum, or that you can draw with. And until we hear different or 6 is not enough, that's what it's going to get delivered as. All right, so let me show you what's going on here. Show you the properties real quick. So on the properties, this is not feature-based. Forgot to point that out to you. This is controlled by level and through that database. So I've received a email or a phone call a couple of months ago. Somebody was starting to use it and they were going through the features, and it is listed in there, but we don't draw the patterns that way. We do it through the payment marking tool, or we're going to do it through that freehand draw tool. But here's what you end up with. You have the level it goes on, the line style, in this case 1030, the weight, and the color. That's all set by level. And it gives you some information down here. Your pay item number, description, how it's measured, linear feet, which side it was drawn on, and the length. And that's it for the properties there. I'm not going to get into the separation or they're pretty straightforward. There is a training manual that I have written. It shows the basics of the sign tool and the pavement marking tool. And after this webinar for the next 2 weeks, I will be updating that manual, and it will contain additional information and of how to use these tools. And place cell group, which is not here, like I said earlier, we'll be placing the painted pavement messages, RPMs, and it will contain a conduit draw tool with it. And there are additional traffic plan tools that are coming. One of them is the signal design tools, which will should give you some easier workflow to create mast arms, since their mast arms are different cells combined together to make one unit. That's in the works. So it's fast moving, and functionality is being added constantly. And like I said, I'm overseeing that addition to ORD, just like I do with the Civil 3D side. So, and the feedback from the Civil 3D side was great as far as how the tools worked. It does what they want, and a lot of people that use the Civil 3D side use both platforms. So, and of course, you're my guinea pigs out in the audience now. So, any questions or problems that you have, please direct them to me. Any enhancements and suggestions, please direct them to me. Any errors, complaints, direct them to Matt Sexton. And that's a joke. With that, this is all I have to show today for this webinar. We're up on an hour. And I'm going to turn over to Matt for a second, in case he has anything to add.
All right. Thanks, Randy. Absolutely. Like Randy said, do direct any complaints or angry emails directly to me. I'll be happy to take those. Thanks for that. This was the last webinar in our Getting Started series for FDOT Connect. If you have other topics or other things you think that we should address or talk about in future webinars, please do direct them to either me or to the CADD.support email address that you're probably familiar with, and we'll be glad to go ahead and think about those and try to schedule some webinars coming up to address those topics. Thanks for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.